Here are 5 hidden features in the brand new PS5 update. Is Sony banning players from the PSN? We've got rumors of a classic PlayStation game coming back. We've also got rumors of a new horror game. And did Sony just acquire a brand new VR studio? We've all heard the tragic tale of the Friday the 13th game from Gun Interactive. So this was actually a game that started out as a Kickstarter for a game called Summer Camp that was basically Friday the 13th the game without any reference to Friday the 13th. And once they raised the money for that game, they went to the studio that owned Friday the 13th and they said, look, people want something like this, and they got the rights, and the rest is history. Now, when it came out, I'd be lying if I said it wasn't a buggy mess. I mean, this game didn't even work right on the Xbox One for, I'm pretty sure, the entire first month of its release, but that kind of went with the movies. You know, they started out as a competitor to Halloween that was supposed to be as cheap as possible, and then it sort of just evolved into this whole big thing with Jason as this awesome antagonist who you really wanted to see going around chopping up teenagers at summer camp. And the game really did get everything right. The graphics weren't anything incredible, but they got the job done, and they brought back Kane Hodder to play Jason in the game, which is incredible. And on top of that, they had movie accurate kills, they had their own original kills, they had maps that were pulled straight from the movies. And right at the peak of its popularity, when they were working on stuff like this paranoia mode that was basically Among Us before Among Us, and a full map that was set on the spaceship from Jason X called the Grundle, and it would also include Jason X as a playable character. Like, this was in the game and people were figuring out how to play it. A lawsuit caused everything to fall apart. Basically, the writer of the original Friday the 13th movie took advantage of a law where after 35 years, you can take back the rights to your screenplay and get royalties from that point forward. The guy who currently owns the Friday the 13th franchise, Sean Cunningham, didn't like that, and this big lawsuit that's still going on started, and that's why the game had to stop being developed. Now, after that, Gun Interactive turned into more of a publisher than a developer, but it looks like they're about to jump back into the horror multiplayer world, because comicbook.com via Reddit discovered that if you go to leatherfacethegame.com, it would actually take you to Gun Interactive's website. Now, it's not clear if this is something that they've just wanted to make forever, so they just bought up the domain so they have it when they're ready for it, or if this is actually going to happen. But I feel like Gun Interactive learned a lot on the Friday the 13th game, and taking advantage of Leatherface's IP with a new Texas Chainsaw Massacre movie coming out on Netflix very soon, the timing all just sort of works out together, and I really think they know what they're doing at this point. Watching this new PlayStation showcase the other day really got me thinking about one of the games that hasn't been talked about in a long time, which is Final Fantasy XVI. Now, this is going to be at least a timed exclusive on the PS5, and it was shown off at that big PlayStation showcase that happened well before the PS5 even came out. But Square Enix kind of went dark on the game after that big event. We really haven't heard anything since, which is weird because there was gameplay in that event, and fans have noticed they're kind of accusing the director Naoki Yoshida of focusing way more on Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker expansion, but thankfully in an interview he came out and said, no, I'm not focusing on that more than Final Fantasy XVI. I just want to focus on what's next on my plate in the marketing. So I'm working on Final Fantasy XIV's Endwalker expansion now, and when that's wrapped up, we can look forward to Final Fantasy XVI. Now, honestly, I'm really excited for Final Fantasy XVI. I played 15 as my first Final Fantasy game, and I really liked it. You know, it was a little rough around the edges, but the first half where you have this open world, you're driving around with your friends, it's like a road trip movie, that really hit me hard because I played it right after I moved out to LA, and I did a road trip with my dad, and it was super fun. And then I went back to this game after a few years of updates, and it's so much better. But just watching the trailer for Final Fantasy XVI, it's very clear it's going to be a much different game than Final Fantasy XV. It's going to be violent and gory and full of blood, and honestly, it looks like it might actually earn an M rating, which is just music to my ears. That's one of the coolest things about the Final Fantasy franchise. Unless you have a numbered sequel like 10 to 10-2, they don't really connect, which means you can kind of do whatever you want with each subsequent game. So it is okay to jump in on the 15th mainline game instead of playing it all the way from the beginning like I did. The fact that we saw so much gameplay for Final Fantasy XVI makes me think that it's not actually that far off. I wouldn't expect to see it next year, but maybe in early or mid 2023, and I'm really excited for it. So I noticed in the comments in the last video that you guys really like this whole domination scene I've got going on here with the PS5 stomping out the Xbox. So if you want to keep seeing this in videos, you better subscribe and set your notifications to all, like now. So a couple videos back, we talked about this rumored GTA trilogy of remasters of GTA 3, San Andreas, and Vice City that was supposedly coming to next-gen consoles. And I noticed when I was looking for news for this video that a lot of these websites who basically turn what people Google into articles are posting articles asking if this trilogy is also going to come to the PS4. Like guys, if you're worried that this trilogy of PS2 games being slightly upscaled and having better controls and overall gameplay isn't going to make it to the PS4, I don't think you have anything to worry about after all. We all know that Sony's having trouble getting PS5s out there in the first place, and when you're seeing games like Horizon Forbidden West and Gran Turismo 7 and God of War Ragnarok all coming to the PS4 as well as the PS5, I think it's going to be just fine for this trilogy of Grand Theft Auto games. I did notice that this trilogy wasn't confirmed immediately after the leaks, which is weird because it's not really the highest profile of releases if the rumors are correct. I mean, we just saw Alan Wake Remastered get announced through leaks, and then a couple days later the official announcement happened. So I don't know what's going on. I'm still not 100% sold on this being real, but I can pretty much guarantee you that if this does come out and it is real, it will probably come to PS4 as well. In the video where I talked about the big PlayStation showcase, we also talked about an interview with Sean Layden, who's the old CEO of PlayStation who stepped down and let Jim Ryan take his role. In that video, we talked about the part of the interview where he said why he left PlayStation, but he also talked a lot more about why Sony makes so many sequels to their biggest IPs. Basically, the way he broke it down is that with each subsequent generation of consoles, the budget that games require doubles. So in the PS3 generation, games cost like $50 million, and in the PS4 generation, games cost $100 million. Now, because every big PS5 game so far is also coming to PS4, I don't think the budgets have increased all that much, but as that starts to change and we start getting mainline PS5 games, I could totally see the budgets expanding to $200 million. So when you're spending that much on a video game, if a studio comes to you with a brand new IP pitch, or they want to make Ghost of Tsushima 2, for example, or Horizon Forbidden West, you're going to go with the sequel over that new IP, because if you're spending that much money, it's so much safer to go with the sequel. But to be fair to Sony, the last generation was a huge one for them introducing new IP. We got Horizon Zero Dawn, we got Ghost of Tsushima, we got Bloodborne, we got Days Gone. Like, these are all brand new IPs that totally deserve sequels. I mean, I know Days Gone is not getting a sequel, but when you compare it to all those other games, it totally deserves one. It's one of the biggest and most expansive open worlds in that whole pantheon of games, and just the fact that it's a horror game with open world zombie slaying action with giant hordes of zombies, I feel like that totally warrants a PS5 sequel because of that SSD. Like, you could get so many more zombies on screen, and I'm just like getting excited thinking about it, but unfortunately that sequel's never happened. Sony has definitely earned the right to make sequels to all those games, so I don't really understand where the controversy is here. Like, it was asked sort of in a gotcha way, and it just doesn't make sense because all of those games were really good and had good stories, so I would want to see where those stories could go. I mean, if they start making Horizon Forbidden Mexico or like Ghost of Florida, then we can, you know, start criticizing them for making too many sequels, but I think we're safe for right now. Well, things just keep getting worse for Cyberpunk 2077. So the most recent update we had was this big 1.3 patch that came out, and like every other update, didn't really fix all that much and kind of introduced more bugs than it claimed to fix. It also introduced some very small DLCs, like a couple of jackets that only had 2 mod slots and an extra vehicle that really wasn't all that good, and they placed them in weird spots within the story, and everyone's kind of wondering what's going on because according to them, they have 65% of their studio working on this next gen patch for Cyberpunk 2077. But things look like they're changing because they just had a recent earning call, and despite the fact that they promised again that we would be getting this next gen update in 2021, they're now saying they're targeting 2021, which essentially means they're trying their best to make sure this happens in 2021, but it's probably going to be delayed till next year. I really hope whatever this new relaunch adds leaves behind the PS4 and Xbox One. That's what's really holding this game back and what stopped it from being the game that they promised. There's a YouTuber called Tyler McIver who data mined the hell out of the 1.3 patch, and what he was able to find is that while on the surface it didn't look like they changed all that much, on the back end, like on the engine side, they started reintroducing the multiplayer mode that was canceled that they were working on. Now the difference is this is like multiplayer that's going to work with the map in the current game we already have, and what they had started working on after they shipped the main game was a standalone multiplayer game. But still, they're doing some crazy stuff behind the scenes. It really seems like they are going to relaunch this game, but I would also recommend checking out Tyler's channel because he also did a really cool video where he played a beta version of Cyberpunk, because if you have a PS4 PS4 disc and you completely remove the game from your hard drive, you can play the version of the game on the disc, and it actually has a lot more features than are even in the game right now. I mean, it's a big mess of a game. I feel like they could potentially have a No Man's Sky moment, but it's going to take a while. But again, I think it's good that they're giving it all the time it needs now. It just sucks that they had to release it and charge everyone to beta test it. I hate stuff like that. A few videos back, we talked about how Sony shut down its VR studio, Manchester Studio, after they worked on a VR game for 5 years and failed to produce anything. They were working on a game called SARS Search and Rescue, where you would pilot a helicopter and go out on missions and come back to your hub world, which actually sounds pretty cool, but yeah, they just couldn't figure out how to make it. Now, obviously, when this happened, people got a little worried because Sony also said recently that instead of doing standalone VR games for the PSVR 2, they're going to do more stuff where you're going to be able to play the game on your PS5 without a VR headset, but if you have a VR headset, there's going to be an enhanced VR mode. Think stuff like Resident Evil 7, where you could totally play that game just fine without VR, but it also totally supported PSVR. Now, the reason that's important is because it turns out Sony is actually looking to support VR because they just bought one of their highest profile VR studios called Firesprite. They made this game for the PS4 called The Playroom, which is like the precursor to Astro's Playroom, and then when the PSVR came out, they made the Playroom VR. But the most important game they made to me is this game called The Persistence, which is a survival horror game set in VR that actually got pretty decent reviews and then was retroactively turned into a regular horror game, I think. I haven't really checked it out because the PSVR one has that screen door effect and it really makes me sick. It just feels old at this point, but knowing they bought this horror VR studio, I mean, I just want to see what they do next for the PSVR 2. I also saw that they were hiring earlier this year for a VR game set in the universe of Horizon, which sounds awesome. We've seen tie-in stuff like that before, specifically from Bethesda. They did a VR version of Wolfenstein 2 that honestly wasn't very good, but Sony and their first party does things a little bit better than Bethesda does on the VR side of things. I don't feel like I'm ruffling any feathers by saying that. Either way, it's good to see that Sony didn't give up on the PSVR after it didn't light the sales world on fire, because we've seen them do that before, specifically with the PS Vita. I really want to see where the PSVR 2 goes, and really, it feels like the last chance for that platform, so I hope they do it right. It looks like they're on to a great start with the controllers though. I think it's fair to say that Sony's done a good job working out many of the major kinks that the PS5 had at launch, and they've done it all before the first anniversary of the console. But there's a new issue that's been popping up a lot on Reddit that I noticed that honestly sounds pretty bad. So a few users are reporting that once they got their PS5s and set up a brand new PSN account, they were automatically getting permabanned from the PSN. And when they would call PlayStation support, they would be like, huh, that's weird. You just set up a brand new account on this new factory reset PS5, so we're going to set this ban from permanent to just 24 hours. Now, side note, it's really weird that they can't just lift the ban, but 24 hours is better than permanent. I was digging into this, and the leading theory seems to be that these people are buying used PS5s, so what's happening is people are cheating in games on their PS5 or trying to hack the PSN or something like that, and then their console is getting hardware banned, so they sell it used online for more than they paid for it, and then these people get their shiny new used PS5, log into their accounts, and get faced with a permaban. Now, Sony hasn't really commented on this. We don't know how aggressively they're trying to ban people, but still, the fact that they can't tell that these PS5s are in a completely different state potentially from being bought online, and they're still permanently banning new users that log in on it, I get why they want to be more secure and stop people from cheating, and I'm glad they do that. It's just like, you would think in 2021 they'd have a better system for this. Now, thankfully, this seems like it's only happening to a few people, but as time goes on, there's going to be more and more used PS5s popping up on the market. That means more and more used PS5s with hardware bans are also going to be popping up. So I hope Sony takes notice of all these people who are having issues with this and figures out a better way to fix their security. Because it would really suck to get a used PS5 after waiting months and months not being able to get one new, only to find that your brand new PSN account gets banned immediately. And honestly, if you already had a PSN account and logged in on this hardware banned PS5 and then your PSN account got banned, that would be terrifying. I just don't want that scenario to ever happen. So Sony, please figure out a way to fix this. After about a month wait, we finally have the brand new firmware update for the PS5. PS5, and we all know the headline feature with this update is that you can now expand the storage of your PS5 with an external SSD that you put inside the PS5 by popping off the side plate and doing a white scratch all across the side of your PlayStation. And just remember, you need to have a heatsink on your SSD. We will have every available one linked down in the description as well. But now that we got the headline feature out of the way, let's talk about some of the secret ones that were included with this update. Starting with trophy tracking, which to me is an incredible new addition to the console that not only fixes a big problem that it had at launch, but also expands the feature in a way I wasn't expecting. So all I really wanted was vertical trophies. I felt like that was a fair thing to ask Sony, and they said, okay, we're gonna give that to you, but now you can also pin trophies to the control center. So when you're going for a very specific trophy, like the very last trophy in Destiny 2, for example, like I was, and you just wanna see how far along you are with it, you can just pin that trophy right to your control center and pull it up with the PS button. That is an incredible change. Another cool thing they added is 3D audio to TV speakers. So if you've just got a stereo setup like your TV's built-in speakers, they've activated 3D audio. And from what I hear, it sounds really good. I have a soundbar hooked up to both of my TVs, so I didn't really get to take full advantage of this. But again, from what I've seen online, this actually works pretty well. Now that PS Now is actually starting to get good, I'm actually kind of excited to talk about it. They've added the ability on the PS5 to switch between 1080p streaming and 720p streaming, just in case you have a data limit or something like that. Like, you probably would want to stream at 720p with some of these games so you're not blowing through your cap and paying a ton of money to your ISP. And over on the PlayStation app, you've got new updates for remote play, one that allows you to use a mobile network. So if you're out of your house and you're not connected to Wi-Fi, you can connect directly to your PS5 and stream games to your phone. I haven't tried that out. I hope it works. It sounds like something that's not going to work as well as it should, but we will just have to wait and see on that one. And while you're in the PlayStation app, you can also check and see which of your friends are streaming a game they're currently playing, like maybe Deathloop, which just came out. And then if you want to watch it, you can just tune right in from the PlayStation app. It's another small feature that's going to go a long way. And then if you're either one of those people who has a PS4 and PS5 and you still use both, or you have some friends who have a PS5, on the PS4, you can now look at your friends' trophies on the PS5. It doesn't just show PS4 trophies anymore. And then finally, if you have the Pulse 3D wireless headset, that got an update as well that actually improves the headset like 100 times. I have these headphones. I really didn't like them at launch, but now you can mess around with the equalizer in the PS5 settings, and you can kind of tune it to exactly how you'd like. And I got it to a point where it actually sounds comparable to those SteelSeries ones that I highlighted way back in like the third video on this channel. But yeah, guys, that's it for this new firmware update for the PS5. Some of these features are new, some of them I've talked about before, but if you're a new viewer here, you should definitely go ahead and subscribe and set your notifications to all. As always, guys, my name is Jimmy Champagne, and I'll see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.